tourists which we received from Zimbabwe last year were 2.1 million tourists who came to South Africa. The next highest number of tourists who came to South Africa were from the UK and the US respectively, 350,000 people each. So, Ramon, what's happened in Zimbabwe to allow 2.1 million tourists to travel to South Africa?
We all know the old adage. What do you say to Zimbabwean tourists when you see him in public? Another cappuccino, please. But anyway, the reason why we are here is because, ironically enough, we got all these Zimbabwean tourists coming here for better opportunities. But Byron, will you ever believe me if I say economic growth in Zimbabwe since 1994 has been better than economic growth in South Africa since 1994? You can be sanctioned, kill all the whites, steal all the land, and you still do better economically than having a retarded ANC government.
So this is the news from the Daily Investor, which basically highlights a World Bank GDP data survey, if you will. Basically what it says is that between 1993 and 2022, South Africa's GDP in terms of US terms increased by 275%. And between the same period, Zimbabwe's GDP, referenced in US dollars, increased by 417%. That's nearly double the economic growth that South Africa experienced. That's amazing.
Because literally, what has happened in Zimbabwe since 1993? You had expropriation of all white land. You had hyperinflation. You had sanctions. You've had mass immigration, mass poverty, one-party state, the killing of the opposition parties. And you still get more economic growth than retarded ANC BE cater deployment-based government. If this, my friends, is not just the greatest example of how retardanistan works, there's no hope for you. Zimbabwe is doing better than us, despite everything they've gone through over the last 30 years. I couldn't believe it myself, but it is right here in front of you.
Do you know who else can't believe it, Ramon? Well, actually, that would be our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, because during the State of the Nation address this year, 2024, at time of recording, well, according to him, the reason South Africa's economy was doing really badly was because of the damage caused by the former president, Jacob Zuma. He said that state capture, which he had no involvement in whatsoever, basically hollowed out the economy. He says, and I quote, "Over the past 5 years, we've worked to revive our economy from a decade of stagnation and protect it from domestic and global shocks." Obviously by global shocks, he means, COVID. But basically, he says, we've made progress. Our economy today is 3 times larger than it was 30 years ago. Now, you see, Ramon, the reason that this in itself is really, really puzzling is that despite all of the economic problems that have occurred in Zimbabwe, apparently Cyril Ramaphosa has lied. And actually, if you look at it in terms of the GDP, at least in US terms, it's actually now significantly smaller than it was in 2011. That is, according to the Daily Investor article.
And this is the same guy who kept talking about 9 wasted years. Well, I mean, they're still wasted under this prick, right, Ramaphosa's face. But it's not only Zimbabwe that has grown more than us. Mozambique has grown 639% over this period of time. Mozambique is a communist state with an AK-47 on its flag. There is little to no land ownership rights in Mozambique, yet they still grew more than South Africa in the same period of time. In fact, everyone grew more than South Africa since 1993. Zambia, 892%. Angola, 1,800%. Even Botswana, 500%. I mean, when I talk about retardanistan, we're not just another African country. We're doing worse than other African countries. That's how retarded we are.
The grand irony is that many individuals say South Africa will become Zimbabwe. It will just go down the pan and become like Zimbabwe. Well, actually, if we did become like Zimbabwe, we'd probably actually have economic growth. I mean, that's the grand irony. Because if you look at our actual economy, in 2011, it was 458 billion. According to today, it's now 405 billion. So actually it's shrunk quite a bit.
And these are all shithole African countries that are sort of communist and they got the resource curse and they don't have the infrastructure we have. They don't have the diversity of manufacturing that we have. But, they got a few things that work for them. Like, number one, they got electricity, which helps a lot. And number two, I think if they extract something from the soil, they manage to get it somewhere so it can be exported. I mean, those two things, I think they've got and we don't. We did have them, in 1993, but, no more because we've been thoroughly decolonized under the ANC rule. But once again, South Africa is not turning into just another African country. Other African countries are actually growing economically.
At the end of the day, we have to remind ourselves, what do all these African countries not have that we do?
They don't have the retarded ANC in power. Do you think that your water sources are safe? Because in Gauteng in particular, the water situation is becoming increasingly dire. With declining water supply and questionable quality, your health could be at risk. But there is a simple solution. A certified laboratory water test from H2O Guru can ensure that the water from your borehole, tap, or other sources is safe to drink. H2O Guru offers turnkey solutions to transform your water into safe, high-quality drinking water. So whether you wish to put a borehole in your property, or you already have a borehole in your property, or you just want to test the municipal water, why not give H2O Guru a call?